Hi there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 436 of the DBR podcast, the Duke Basketball Report. We know we've been a little lax about coming at you guys lately, but frankly, it's been the summer. We've been vacationing, going different places. The Duke basketball team, every so often they drop a little bit of uncut video, not entirely uncut, but there just hasn't been a ton of Duke news. So I think I've come up with an interesting idea for today's episode. Before we get to it, introduction time. I, of course, am Jason Evans. I'm coming to you actually from the Jersey Shore, from Longport, sort of sandwiched in between Atlantic City and Ocean City. It is this oasis of really
You're
nice...
over by Margate. I've been to Margate in Ocean City, New Jersey before. Also Ocean City, Maryland.
And my question for Jason was, did you go to any of the fish shows this weekend?
No. Were there fish shows in town? I did not know
in Atlantic City. It was the end of the tour. People were hyped.
I'm sure there were. I don't hate fish, but I'm not a fish fan. So
you're like you're like the perfect age to have loved fish when they were coming up.
This is true. It's true, but it never caught on with me. Never hooked with me. So I've mostly just been hanging out on the beach and chilling and enjoying taking a few days away from the rest of the world. What have you guys been up to? Donald, you've been traveling, right?
Yeah. So indulge me for a minute. I was in Detroit for the last 6 days. I literally, as we record, I just got back to DC about an hour ago. But it was a real special weekend because for Detroit Tigers fans, Lou Whitaker, who is one of the greats of all time, second baseman, alongside Alan Trammell, the two duo that has the most double plays, and the shortstop second baseman duo that has played the most games in Major League Baseball history. Lou Whitaker got his number retired this past weekend, and growing up,
that seems long overdue.
I'll get to that. So, going back to the start of the season, before there was the lockout, they announced that they were finally retiring his number. What happened was they were going to retire it in 2020, but we had a pandemic. Last year, they also set a date, but then realized that they wouldn't be able to have full capacity, and so they said, we want to make it where it's a moment where Lou Whitaker gets his roses and is able to do it in front of a full crowd. So full crowd it was on Saturday afternoon, but he was my dad's favorite player. And my favorite player growing up was Alan Trammell. So it made sense. Me and my dad would always go to games. He would wear his Lou Whitaker jersey. I would wear my Trammell jersey. So when this was announced at the beginning of the season, I told my dad, we're going. This is what we've been waiting for. This is the one. We're going. So me and him went up there. My aunt was with me. One of my best friends from back home was with me. We got to meet Lou Whitaker. We got some autographs in the beginning of the day. We waited in line like an hour and a half to shake his hand and get some pictures taken, which was really cool. They were giving away Lou Whitaker jerseys, and it was everything. This weekend was literally everything that we hoped it would be when we thought about doing this back in March. So shout out to my dad. I know he had a great time. And I had a great time with him, but it was a really special moment for one of Detroit's just beloved stars. And if you're not a fan of Lou Whitaker and you live in Detroit, then I don't know what to tell you, because Lou Whitaker is Detroit. And if you have not heard of Lou Whitaker, go watch some of his YouTube videos, because he is one of the all-time great second basemen that baseball has ever had. And I just loved every weekend. So I wanted to share that. I thought that was a very special moment that me and my dad were able to have.
I love it. Sam Klein's also with us. Sam, where are you?
I am at my new apartment in Cambridge. I have left Boston. I've gone so far away. I'm across one bridge. And and relative to Donald in baseball fan land, the Nationals traded Juan Soto last week to the Padres.
Big deal.
The era of the Nats where they were good really definitely absolutely is over now. So the bad times are here, or at least they continue to be here and probably will be for a while.
Hey, the last time they traded a really big star was back in 2018. They traded Bryce Harper, and he also was the guy that won the home run derby in 2018. They won the World Series in 2019. Fast forward to 2022, Soto wins the home run derby, gets traded. Just saying, 2023 might be the year.
Donald, you are speaking my language, sir.
I got bad news for you. It looks like the Mets and the Braves are going to be two of the better teams in baseball for a while.
The best team doesn't always win.
That is true. The Nationals were the best team in baseball for a couple years there. and
they didn't
failed
win.
to get out of the first round, and then they had to win the wild card to win the World Series. So it only takes a spark. You want to talk about Duke basketball?
Yeah, I was going to say enough baseball. Let's get on to Duke basketball, and I'm going to set up for you all the theory behind today's podcast. 5 surprising things that could happen to Duke basketball in the next year. And here's how this works. I have come up with 5 things that I think, and by the way, Donald and Sam, they have no idea about any of this. Their preparation for this is exactly 0. They don't know what's going to come and hit them in the face. But I've been thinking about these things, and my goal with each of these 5 things is that your initial reaction to it will be, whoa, wait a second, no way. And then take a couple moments, think about it a little bit, and you'll go, huh, that's actually possible. So the way we're going to do this is I will present each of my 5 things. We will each rate them on a scale from 1 to 10, which approximately is the percentage. Like if you give it a 6, you think there's a 60% chance that this somewhat surprising thing might happen. If you give it a 3, it's a 30% chance. You guys can follow the math. And then after we give the percentages, the numbers from 1 to 10, we will, the 3 of us, discuss each of these items before moving on to the next one. And here's my first one. Ready for this, gentlemen?
Let's do it.
My first surprising thing that could happen for Duke basketball in the next year is this. Ryan Young will average more points per game than Dereck Lively. Seems a little bit crazy. Dereck Lively is a one-and-done lottery pick, considered by many to be the number 1 recruit in the class. Ryan Young is a 5th-year senior who didn't even start last year at a lower-tier Big Ten school. How is it possible that could possibly happen? And Donald, I will come to you first. Just give me first your 1 to 10 on whether you think it is possible that Ryan Young will average more points than Dereck Lively.
I'm going to go 3 out of 10.
Sam, what about you?
3 out of 10 possible or 3 out of 10 likely? Because these are different metrics.
So that would be, he gives it a 30% chance of happening, a 3 on a 1 to 10 scale.
Of likelihood, not of possibility. Okay.
Of likelihood, yeah.
I think Donald's probably right. I would maybe take the over on that, on 30%, but I think that's a good place to be. Do you want me to tell you why?
Not yet, because I'm going to give my number. My number, you're going to be surprised. My number is going to be high. I'm going to go 5. I think there's at least a 50% chance that this is going to happen. Now, Sam.
So wait, Jason, the way this was structured, I thought these are 5 things that you believe wholeheartedly, and you're trying to see.
Oh, no. He's just testing us.
No.
Okay. Gotcha.
These are the idea here is not that these are necessarily even highly likely. The idea here is there are things that at first you might think, no way, but then you think about it a little bit and you begin to understand it's a possibility. So, Sam, you wanted to go ahead. Give me a little bit on, what you think of this possibility.
I think that this certainly hinges a little bit more on Dereck Lively than it does on Ryan Young, but it relies sort of on 2 underlying assumptions. About Young, it assumes that I don't think Duke is creating offense around Ryan Young, but that he's getting a lot of putback points, garbage points. So if you take, this is a completely unfair way to put it, but if you take sort of Jahlil Okafor's production and remove all the times that the ball was like passed to him, if you recall, for Okafor, a lot of the production that he gave Duke in his freshman season was cleanup on, in the paint, getting offensive rebounds, sort of correcting other people's mistakes. Ryan Young is not a creator like that. I don't think anyone expects him to be, but he could be producing 6, 7, 8 points a game around that. On the flip side, the other assumption that you have to believe is that Dereck Lively is just not going to be that much of a scorer, that he's just not developed enough to have the kind of offensive game where Duke is setting up plays for him. And Duke has other scorers on this team, guys who are really going to be the primary scorers in Kyle Filipowski, in Dereck Whitehead, maybe in Tyrese Proctor could get a lot of shots. Jeremy Roach is going to take his fair number of shots. So there are guys on this team that are going to score without Dereck Lively, who's going to be in the starting lineup, getting as many touches on the offensive side.
So for me, I think you add another element to that. For me, I was adding the time element. Just the fact that Ryan Young is, in my mind, I mean, we haven't done a stats game, but I don't think as of right now, he's projected to get nearly as many minutes as Dereck Lively will. And unless he's super efficient, super efficient when he's in the game, and that is possible. We've had guys come off the bench and kind of be a microwave of sorts, but it's hard for a center to do that. It's usually a guard or a wing that can come off, score a bunch of points, and go back to the bench. A guy coming off the bench to be in the center position or just in the paint, like you said, Sam, he's going to have to rely a lot on putbacks, cleanups, and just otherwise loose balls inside the paint. Even guys, you mentioned a lot of those guys who are going to take a lot of shots. He also is relying on them to pass the ball to him or, to dump it off to him when they drive the lane and kind of, do one of those wraparound feeds for him. So I think when it comes to Dereck Lively, he's going to get his fair share of those as well. I don't think that Ryan Young is going to get an exorbitant amount of time relative to Dereck Lively, where he can really make a push to make that happen.
All right, so let me explain to you guys why I'm more, why I'm higher on this, so to speak, than either of you are. And it falls into two camps. The first one, the most obvious one to me, is that I just don't think Dereck Lively is much of a scorer. He wasn't much of a scorer at the AAU level. He was someone, at that level who was largely getting putbacks. He was drifting to the perimeter and taking three-pointers because he is a good three-point shooter. But he's not someone who's making his own post moves. He's not someone who's finishing a lot in the paint off of set plays. And I think that that's going to continue at Duke, especially because he's stepping up in competition. He's going to be facing some really good big men in the ACC, some good defensive players. And I just think that, I think you're going to see Dereck Lively put up some some jaw dropping, some eye opening defensive statistics.
Eye popping, perhaps.
Yeah, there you go. Combination of all those, right? And he's going to have nice rebounding numbers, and he's going to be a very switchable defender. I mean, like the fact that he's going to be able to switch on to guards and still be able to cover them is what has the NBA so excited about him. But I think he's just not going to score all that much for Duke. Conversely, the reason I really like Ryan Young to score some points for Duke, Donald, I don't think he's going to play a ton of minutes, but I think when he plays, he's fairly likely to be playing with a bunch of good shooters surrounding him. I think I can see a lot of scenarios where he's playing at the same time as Jaden Schutt, where he's playing at the same time as other guys who can really fill it up from the perimeter. And as a result, teams just aren't going to focus on him on defense. He's going to be one-on-one in the post. And what we've seen from the summer workout videos, what we've seen from Ryan Young's footage of him at Northwestern, you leave him one-on-one in the post, you may call them old man moves, you may call them YMCA moves. What you call them are buckets. And I think he's going to, I won't be surprised if he is one of Duke's leading points per minute players next year. And I suspect that Duke will run plays for him when he's in the game. Again, I'm not saying Ryan Young's playing 20 plus minutes, but I think that in the 13 to 15 minutes he probably does play, I bet he's going to get the ball with a decent chance of scoring 5-6 times at least per game.
Yeah, Jason, I think we're both putting the nail in the head here, right? Like when we're talking about points per minute, like being efficient when he's in the game. But I also think that number, like in my mind, right? Of course, we have a long time for the stat game, but in my mind, I'm thinking that if he's going to outscore Dereck Lively, despite the fact that we think that Dereck Lively is going to have some, deficiencies on the scoring end, I'm still looking at it where he needs to be getting close to 10 points a game. And I don't know that is necessarily going to be the case. Yes, I think there's going to be games where he does get 10 points or more, and he's going to factor in more, but I don't think that's going to be consistent because, again, I go back to my initial element of I just don't think he's going to have enough time to do it no matter how efficient he is, because there's so many guys on the floor that are going to be with him at any stretch of the game that also can score very, very quickly. And again, 3 points is better than 2. If we have guys that are going to be shooting the 3 a lot, he's going to have to rely on getting long rebounds, which is not necessarily the strength of any center or any big man, because those usually go a little bit further out of their range.
All right, let's move on to the next of my surprising things that could happen for Duke basketball next season. And here it is. Though he is yet to arrive on campus, though there is another player who has been sort of penciled in as the starter at shooting guard, I believe there is a decent chance that Tyrese Proctor will be Duke's starter in our opening game of the season. Sam, come to you first. 1 to 10, how likely do you think it is that Tyrese Proctor will beat?
Are we talking regular season or the exhibition game?
Regular season.
Duke's first game that counts.
Okay.
Sam, what's your number 1 to 10? Tyrese Proctor starting, not necessarily shooting guard, but as the starter in Duke's first regular season game.
Man, I think it's like just below a 50-50 shot. I'll give this like a 4. If we're doing this on a 1 to 10 or 0 to 10 scale, I'm giving this like a 4.5. I think it's more likely than not that he's coming off the bench, but this is one that wouldn't surprise me at all. I was talking earlier about how, Proctor's bringing a lot of skills to the table. Jack White was telling us about it on our last episode. He's a very mature player, despite being kind of young, and would not be surprised if he shows out the way that you discussed. I know it's a wishy-washy answer, but I think he's going to start the season coming off the bench. If you had said by December, is Tyrese Proctor the starting shooting guard, like regularly? Is he getting, the majority of the starts at shooting guard like in ACC play? I would put that at 60 or 70%.
Yeah, maybe even higher. Donald, what about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Sam. I'm going to go slightly higher. I'm going to say 4.9. I think it's literally 51-49, but here's the reason why. Is because it does not matter when Tyrese Proctor shows up on campus. He is going to be the most ready to play on night one than anybody else in the team because he spent a summer playing with men in the Asia Cup and playing, real competitive games where the other guys, no matter what they've been doing in practice, cannot replicate that. So if he comes and he's in that sharp focus that he's been having all summer with the Australian national team, then he has every chance in the world to start over Jacob Grandison. But I'm just going to say, I'm not going to be surprised if he starts. I think right now I have Jacob Grandison starting on night one. But again, the most ready player to play right now is probably going to be Tyrese Proctor because of that experience he got.
Guys, maybe I failed in this. These were supposed to be surprising things, and both of you are coming in here at close to 50%. I'm going to go ahead and say it's like a 6.5 or a 7. I really, and it's the reasons that Donald just cited. He's been playing for that Australian senior national team and been playing really well for them. Tyrese Proctor just went back to the NBL, which is a very good league. As international leagues go, it's one of the top tier of international basketball leagues. He went back to the NBL, and just over the weekend on Sunday, he put up 20 points with 5 rebounds and 5 assists for his team. He's been consistently scoring in double figures, displaying really nifty passing while playing with men in really competitive games all summer long. And yeah, I know he's behind the 8 ball a little bit because he's never played any college basketball. And Jacob Grandison has played 4 years of college basketball. But I think that Tyrese Proctor's talent and his experience that he's gotten lately playing with really good players is going to, Duke's going to immediately plug him in. Am I wrong? Guys, wasn't this supposed to be surprising? Like a few weeks ago, this would have been a surprising thing, right?
One of the things about Jon Scheyer's style that we are yet to know, but I think we'll learn a lot about very early in the season, is the way that he thinks about trading off talent for experience, because he's brought in a number of, Grandison. We already talked about Ryan Young, Cale Catchings, maybe to a lesser extent. Jon Scheyer's brought in a lot of guys with experience who should be playing real minutes for real programs this year. But he also has a lot of young talent coming in, Proctor being a perfect example of that. But Lively, if we go back to the first conversation, the minutes that Lively gets versus the minutes that Ryan Young gets, most of that I think is going to be philosophical on Jon Scheyer's end, and we don't know how he's going to make that trade-off. So I think we sort of have to proceed with wait and see, as opposed to assuming, like, I was sort of inclined to think that he would take the Coach K route on a number of smaller decisions that he's already made, and he hasn't done that, right? Or at least I was personally worried that he was only going to hire Duke guys in the program. One of the biggest hires he made in this offseason was bringing Jay Lucas to Duke, who doesn't have any, he's not a Duke alum. His parents didn't go to Duke, et cetera, et cetera. So Jon Scheyer is open to bucking tradition and is doing it pretty quickly.
All right, gentlemen, we're ready to move on to the next of my 5 surprising things. It is this. Mark Mitchell will start more games than Kyle Filipowski this coming season. Kyle
This is
Filipowski's top 5 recruit. Some people say the number 1 recruit, or top 3 for sure. Mark Mitchell's a fine player. What do we think about this one, Sam?
Can I take this back to, I don't know how Jon Scheyer is going to treat this, but Kyle Filipowski's wearing number 30. Mark Mitchell's not. I think I'm putting this at 10, at a 1 out of 10. I think Filipowski, I think even ahead of Lively, Filipowski is almost guaranteed to get, every start. He and Whitehead feel the most like sort of college ready to me. And I think that his scoring is going to be so important to this team's success that I don't think Jon Scheyer is going to be able to keep him on the bench. The only way that happens is if his scoring somehow doesn't materialize in college.
All right, Donald, what do you think? Mark Mitchell starting more games than Kyle Filipowski.
I would be very surprised if this happens. I'm going to go 2 out of 10. Only because I think when it comes to Mark Mitchell, there's a lot. I feel like there's more competition at his spot than there is necessarily at Kyle Filipowski's. And again,
wait a second. Mark Mitchell and Kyle Filipowski are playing the same spot. Essentially, I'm saying that Mitchell starts at power forward more than Filipowski does.
Yeah, but I think there's more. I think there's a lot of people who can be contending for either spot, but I think in the end, we'll go with Kyle Filipowski because I think he'll match up better alongside Dereck Lively than say Mark Mitchell may be. So, and again, we've only seen 2 raw uncuts, and I say raw uncut in air quotes, right? So you don't really know until we see what the regular season's like. But I do think right now, from what we've seen and from just how the team has been kind of talking about it, Kyle Filipowski and Dereck Lively are going to be the matchup, the pairing up front. And Mark Mitchell may slide in there at certain parts, but I think when it comes to start, and this is not necessarily the same minutes, right? This is just starts. Like who starts when the ball is tipped, I think is going to be Kyle Filipowski.
All right. Well, so sort of like you guys, I'm not super high in this. I was going to give it a 3 out of 10, but I think it's still a possibility. And Can I
ask you an alternative version of this?
Sure.
Is there
please.
any world where Mark Mitchell, Kyle Filipowski, and Dereck Lively start in the same game?
I don't think so. I think it would take a series of injuries. I don't see there being room for that. Dereck Whitehead has to start. Dereck Whitehead is
and he can't be the wing next to Jeremy Roach. Like he has to be the 3.
So my answer to that would be if you're playing Roach, Whitehead, Mitchell, Filipowski, and Lively, you're going to have spacing troubles, and you may have some creation troubles as well. That's just I just kind of I think Whitehead, especially with his size, he's closer to 6'8" than he is to 6'6". I think he's probably better suited to small forward than he is to I don't see it happening.
If Duke could start Cam Reddish, RJ Barrett, and Zion Williamson all on the same team, then I'm just saying you can't put it past him. But that seems like it might be an even tougher hypothetical than the one we were already talking about.
That seems more surprising, but I don't see it out of the realm of possibility. And I think that's where this exercise is, right? All these things so far, Jason, that you've said have not been out of the realm of possibility. It's just a matter of how likely do we think is going to happen. Like out of the realm of possibility, like surprising is like Jalen Blake's is starting 40 games, right? Like that would be surprising. But for this, like, I think I wouldn't necessarily see it happening. But if it happens, it's clearly because something is happening in practice that we're not seeing yet.
So the reason I put this in there, and the reason I think it's slightly more likely than you guys do, is I'm of the belief, what I've seen so far from the scrimmage footage, Mark Mitchell has impressed with his athleticism. I see this guy play, and I'm like, he's bringing something to the table that I'm not sure there are a lot of other guys on this Duke team that can bring to that, that can bring to the table. And we see it in some of the All-Star games. We've seen it in some of the scrimmage footage. Kyle Filipowski has not looked super comfortable all the time. Like the speed and the athleticism and the size of the game, I think are coming, he's having a little more trouble adjusting to that stuff than when he was in high school and even when he was playing elite AAU basketball. I'm not saying Filipowski's going to have a bad season, but the reason I gave this a possibility, the reason I think that this could happen is that I think that maybe Filipowski may take a little more time to adjust to exactly what college basketball is all about. And I think that Mark Mitchell's athleticism may translate a little bit quicker than Kyle Filipowski's skills. Hey, guys, we're going to take a break. When we come back from that break, 2 more surprising things that could happen to Duke basketball in the next year. Stay with us. All right, gentlemen, we're back from the break, and this next one, I'm going to freely admit, 5 is like the magic number. You're like, oh, 5 things this, 5 things that. I sort of had 4 that I really liked, and this is the one that I was a little bit like, I don't know. So here you go. Surprising things that could happen to Duke basketball in the next year. Jeremy Roach will not lead Duke in assists.
I love this question. Because
this is the best one we've had.
Okay, good.
I can't decide if I like the possibility that Jeremy Roach isn't going to lead the team in assists or that I don't like that possibility. I believe I don't like it. I think if Jeremy Roach doesn't lead the team in assists, the most likely outcome is that things have gone awry for Duke. Jeremy Roach has a big injury, or he just has it'll be more a function of him than it will be a function of Whitehead, Proctor, whoever it is that does eventually lead the team in assists. I'm going to put it at a low number. I'm going to say this is like a 1.5 because I just feel like the ball is going to be, he's a junior, right? It'd be another thing, I think, if he was still a sophomore, but he's going to be a junior. Presumably he's a captain. Like it just feels, it's so hard to believe that Jeremy Roach won't be playing 32, 33, 34 minutes for this team, if not even more, depending on how much he develops over the summer. And he just always has the ball in his hands.
So here's my rationale for it. And I'm only giving it a 2. I don't think this is likely, but my rationale for this is this. I think that Jeremy Roach is going to be hunting his shot more than he has in the past. I think that we began to see him doing that when we were, in the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament, and his assist totals weren't big, but his scoring totals started to increase. So I think he's going to be hunting his shot, and I think that's a good thing. And I also think there's a possibility that because I think he's turning into a pretty efficient, really good scorer. I think there's a possibility he plays, off the ball a little bit more. I think you may see Tyrese Proctor actually playing a fair bit of point guard. I think you're going to see the ball in the hands of Dereck Whitehead a pretty fair amount. And that Jeremy Roach, there's, I'm not sure who it would be. I think it would probably be Proctor, but maybe Whitehead ends up leading the team in assists. But I think this could happen. And Sam, I don't think it necessarily is a bad thing for Duke. There's a world where Jeremy Roach averages 16, 17 points per game and only 3 assists per game. I don't think that world is that crazy to think about. And I don't think that's a bad thing for Duke. All right, Donald, your turn. What do you think about this one?
This is like a 0.5 for me. Like, this is not happening. You're basically saying Jeremy Roach versus the field, and I'm not taking the field in this because I think, again, even if Jeremy Roach is going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, whether he's the point guard or, Jason, as you mentioned, even if he's the off guard, it means he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. He's not going to be shooting the ball like from beyond the arc more times than he's going to be driving the lane and going into the paint. Because when he does that, he's going to be able to find options too. Like, he was great when he was doing this last year at driving the lane. And when he realized, there's a bunch of tall trees here, he would dish it off to somebody who would lay it in or dunk it or dish it out for someone for the 3. It's not necessarily that he's not going to be hunting for a shot. That's true, but he's not going to force it either. I think he is smart enough to know when he can go for his and when he can make the safe pass to somebody who's going to have a better option than he is. And that he's proven that, especially over the last 10, 15 games of last year, he proved that he could do that. And I think he's only getting better at that. So 0.5. This man is leading in assists. Like, just put it in the stats game. I'll pick him. I'll be wrong. I reserve the right to be wrong, but that's where I stand right now.
All right, last thing. Last of our 5 surprising things that could happen in Duke basketball in the next year, and I'm going long term. I'm going a year from now. There are dudes who are currently on the roster who are expected to turn pro or exhaust their eligibility. It seems extremely likely. If I ask you right now, what's Duke's roster going to be next year? It will likely largely consist of returnees Jalen Blakes, Jaden Schutt, Christian Reeves, and Ryan Young, because Ryan Young, by the way, should have an extra year of eligibility. I'm not counting Spencer Hubbard or Stanley Borden in this, the walk-ons. So those 4 guys, Blakes, Schutt, Reeves, and Young, and our current recruits, Mackenzie Mbakos, Sean Stewart, Caleb Foster, and Jared McCain. That's 8 players. All right. You follow my logic here? Those 8 guys. Everyone seems to think those are, locked in as the guys who will be on Duke's roster next year. My unlikely thing is this. One of those guys will not be on the Duke roster next year for 23-24. How likely is it that Duke has a defection among those 8 guys seen as the most likely to return next year? Sam?
Like 90%.
Wow, really?
Guys are transferring all the time. I would love for them all to be on the team next year. I think there's a reason that they're all on the team this year, but whether it's Ryan Young doesn't get minutes this year, he wants them somewhere else. Jalen Blakes doesn't get minutes this year, he wants them somewhere else. Somewhere along the line here, one of these guys is transferring out. I don't think that any of them are like going to blow up and go to the NBA. I think it's just a minutes thing, and there are enough of them and enough awesome talent coming in, because we know that Duke's already got a pretty good head start on that high school class of 23, that it's almost certain that someone is transferring away after this year.
Donald, what do you think about this?
I'm going 9.2 because that's the current landscape of college basketball. Somebody is leaving. And again, like Sam said, think about it. There was I believe it was only like 8 programs in Division I college basketball that did not have anybody leave to go I'm sorry, when I say leave, like enter the transfer portal, like only 8 programs in college basketball in Division I kept all their guys free of the transfer portal. We were not one of them. We were one of them until very, very late in the game, but we were not even one of them. So I'm pretty sure that somebody is going to say, hey, I'm going to try and find minutes elsewhere. And it's not you, it's me. Like, it's not going to be a very acrimonious split from anybody. It's going to be someone saying, hey, I appreciated my time here. I learned a lot, but I want to play more. And the writing's on the wall that I'm not going to get a lot of playing time here. I can find it elsewhere.
Wow, guys, I did not expect this from you guys. I really, this is supposed to be something surprising. And it turns out you guys both think it's super, super likely to happen. I was going to put it at about a 7, which is way less than you all, but I thought that was going to be high. And I agree with you. I think it's pretty likely that somebody will say, you know what, I'm just not getting the opportunity that I want here. I'm not sure who it'll be, but God, it's depressing that you guys are so sure.
It's what it is, right? Like, This is, if you think about it, like, there's only a few years over the last 15 years where we have kept a team intact, where nobody entered the transfer portal or graduated early or did a graduate transfer or something like that. We've had, even in our best years over these last 15, we've had people leave mid-season. We've had people leave within the year. It's part of the landscape of college basketball, so it would be more surprising for me if we kept everybody.
Jason, Henry Coleman left.
I'm so depressed about that. I'm still depressed about that.
I'm just saying,
friend of the pod, shout out.
You can't, yeah, exactly. You can't count on anything anymore. Like, I'm looking at Duke's recruiting page. If Christian Reeves doesn't get any minute, like Christian Reeves went to Oak Hill. I know he's
he's probably gonna redshirt this year.
I understand, but maybe he's gonna be like, you know what? Screw this. I don't want to play behind Mackenzie Mbako or whoever else is coming in next year. I want my minutes and I want them now. Kid went to Oak Hill. He's a serious basketball player.
He's a friend of Caleb Foster. He came so he and Caleb Foster can play together. I don't think.
Well, let's see.
Trevor
Keels could have stayed. Trevor Keels could have stayed at Duke this year to play with his very good friend Jeremy Roach, and instead he decided to go to the NBA, become a second-round pick, which is, kind of what everyone sort of expected was going to happen, and
get a two-way contract that pays him probably about the same as he would have made if he'd stayed at Duke.
So who knows,
not
man?
Show friends, it's show business. Like, your friends will always be your friends. Like, if Caleb and Christian are friends, that's cool. They're gonna be friends if one of them decides to go somewhere else.
All right, guys. So that's going to wrap it up here on this latest episode of the DBR podcast. We got a little bit of business to take care of before we go, though. The first thing is I want to say to everybody out there, everyone listening, if you have a surprising thing, something that you think most people would think is not going to happen, that you think maybe might happen for Duke basketball, send us an email. Write to us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com. The best of those, if there's some that are really good that we think are really interesting, we'll bring them up sometime soon on a podcast. So we said this was 5, it may turn out to be 7, 8, or 9, or 10 things. If you guys come up with some really good ones, write to us, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. And speaking of writing to us, there's one last thing I have to take care of on this podcast. Avery Fulton is 10 years old. Avery wrote to us to say that he and his dad love Duke basketball and that they love listening to the DBR podcast. And his father, Ryan Fulton, just turned 45 a couple days ago, and Avery said we have to wish Ryan a happy birthday. So Ryan, from all of us here at the DBR podcast, happy 45th birthday. You have a great son. Avery wrote to me and told me that his favorite all-time Duke player is either Trey Jones or Jason Tatum. I don't know how a 10-year-old kid really has good memories of Jason Tatum, but I love it.
He's been learning right. So
yes,
you've been doing something right. You're teaching your kid well.
Some kids remember stuff like that.
Yeah. What's more, he says that Ryan, his dad, Ryan's favorite player is JJ Redick. Full endorsement. No problem at all with that. Definitely the right kind of thing for a guy who's 45. JJ Redick, right?
I was going to say JJ Redick almost feels too young for a 45-year-old to have decided that was his favorite player, except that I know a ton of my friends who are like in their 30s who adopted Zion Williamson as their favorite player. So totally valid by me.
I mean, my class, we were a couple years older than JJ. JJ himself is almost 40. So, I mean, if you're a few years removed from college, you probably saw a lot of JJ play from wherever. Probably made a lot of money placing, drink wagers and small wagers for people who were like, oh, I hate that guy JJ's face. And you were probably like, yo, JJ's going for 40 with that beautiful face of his. So, I mean, I get it. I understand because I got to watch him play firsthand. It was beautiful to watch him.
In any event, we are here to wish Ryan a happy 45th and tell him that, Ryan, you got a pretty special little kid there in Avery. Way to go, man. That's it for the DBR podcast. I'm Jason. He is Donald. He is Sam. And this is the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.